All right, hello wine drinking people. We're back with more of what I've had to drink yesterday, and this is our review from our annual event with the folks from Treasury Wine Estates and Penfolds, the crown jewel of Australia. And, we do this tasting every year just because we want to taste the new release of Australia's iconic wine. This 2008 got 100 points, and this is one of the few wines in the world that has scored 100 points in both the Wine Spectator and the Wine Advocate. And, Penfolds, I don't think they need to score 100 points to sell this wine. Grange is one of these iconic wines that's recognized the world over. But, the thing about Penfolds is everything they make is of outstanding quality. We showed all of the top-level wines at this tasting, well, with the exception of the super rare bin wines that are even more expensive than Grange. And I have to say, one of my favorite wines was the 96th Bin 28 Kalimna Shiraz. Yeah, that's right. We try to serve you some older vintage wines to show you how these wines age, and Penfolds makes a more age-worthy style of wine, a more balanced wine. And rumor has it they've never made a wine over 14.3% alcohol. I have a hard time believing that. Well, except for the Grandfather Tawny Port. I mean, a still wine, not a fortified wine. But that's a more classic style of wine. A lot of people in Australia accused of making overly alcoholic wines. Well, Penfolds, just the opposite. Anyways, we started out with our Thomas Hyland Riesling, which most of this fruit comes from the Adelaide Hills. They do make a Riesling called Bin 51, which is what we usually start with, but I think they make some excellent Riesling in the Adelaide Hills. This wine showing like a dry Riesling from Alsace, more than like a German Riesling. Some lovely peach fruit, a little bit of that petrol, and a lovely freshness at the end. And a really light Riesling, but only $9.75. One of the best values we have in the white wine section in the store for the summertime. And then the Yattarna. Yattarna is kind of the counterpoint to Grange. This is the white wine that's made at the very highest level, and they've changed the style of this wine quite a bit. They've lightened up on the oak like most people, and this 2006 still incredibly fresh. Maybe that's because it's under a screw cap, but showing some lovely lemon drop candy fruit, some hints of vanilla spice, some wonderful minerality, and lovely zesty acidity on the finish. Wonderful balance. This wine, similar to what you're going to find in a Premier Cru white Burgundy from France. Just really lovely balance, and this wine could still go another 3, 5, maybe 10 years in your cellar. The screw cap definitely slows down the aging process, but showing beautifully on this evening, the 2006 Yattarna. And then on to the red wines. We started out with one of my favorite wines from Penfolds, the Kalimna, which started out as a single vineyard wine, but like so many things over the year, it's kind of evolved, and Bin 28 has become the bin that this wine is known as. And at Penfolds, all of the wines had their place at the winery, their bin location, so that's where these bins came from. And rumor has it they're going to make RWT a bin wine also. Grange originally was a bin wine also, but it's an iconic wine now. All you need to say is Grange, and it's recognized the world over. But this Kalimna Shiraz 2010, wow, a classic vintage for Shiraz in Australia. This wine had some lovely toasty, smoky oak notes to the blackberry liqueur-like fruit. Really lovely intensity, some dark spice and dark earth. Really lovely intensity showing on the tongue as well. Lots of dark berry fruit, silky smooth tannins, and a host of floral notes and dark spice showing through on the finish. Like I said, a really classic vintage, good structure, and excellent juice. I don't know if the price is right on this. We're going to have to double check it. It's $17 and change. Wow. The Bin 2896, like I said, one of my favorite wines of the night. This wine showing a little bit of oxidation when we first opened it up. It really blowed off and showed beautifully a lovely, silky, smooth tannin to the texture to this wine on the tongue. Some black cherry fruit still showing. Some meaty notes coming through on the end, but lovely balance and lovely freshness still in this wine. Excellent juice, and we have quite a bit of this, in the $35 price range. An excellent value for a vintage Shiraz. Up next, one of my favorite wines, the RWT, created by John Duval. 1997, I think, was the first vintage of this wine. We unveiled it at Cafe Max, one of the first people to show this wine in South Florida. We've done events with John. We've done events with Peter Gago, and it was great to have D. Lynn Proctor here. D. Lynn is the winemaking assistant. Well, I don't know what his title actually is. It's got winemaking in it. And he has worked 3 harvests at Penfolds and several harvests in California. And, well, he was the star of this movie, Psalm, one of the stars. He didn't get his Master Sommelier in the movie, but, you know, one of these really bright, shining stars. This guy tells the story of these wines from Penfolds as well as anybody that's been to CSD. Len, thanks very much. What a wonderful evening. Everybody that was there, well, several people have already called me and thanked me and just gave you kudos for what a great job you did. This RWT 2008, a blockbuster, not a blockbuster vintage, but Penfolds 2008's their top wines. Just incredible concentration and depth in these wines. Sappy blackberry fruit on the nose, some dark brown sugar, licorice, black chocolate notes, really intense and lovely intensity shining through on the palate. Just lovely ripeness in the tannins. These wines have got great structure, that toasty oak spice and dark chocolate note showing through the long finish, but wonderful freshness and length again. Most excellent juice. This wine I'd like to try it 10 years from now. And hey, we showed you some older wines like the 1999 Magill Estate. This is the original property. It went from 50 hectares to 2.5 hectares because of urban expansion. I guess the vineyard land was worth more as condos than it was as vineyards at one time. But this is one of my favorite wines they make, and one of the only single vineyard wines they make at Penfolds. Bit of dried tobacco, cigar box spice in this 99, but showing still wonderful fruit. Black cherry, dark plum, hints of licorice spice. Nice evolution in this wine, but wow, still really has some legs. This wine's got a solid core of blackberry fruit and really well built, some firm tannins still at the end, and lovely freshness. This wine could go another decade or more. Most excellent juice. The 2010 Bin 407. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon-based wine, dark currant and cassis berry fruit, some dark earth, toasty oak spice. As I mentioned before, this 2010 a classic vintage, a little bit of eucalyptus, black tea, and cigar box in this as well. Nice complexity on the nose and showing through on the palate. Really big and chewy, that dark currant berry fruit showing, and a firm hand of acidity, some dry tannins coming in at the end, but this wine has got enough fruit to match, and a lot of those exotic spice and notes showing through on the finish. Excellent juice, the 2010 407. And then the Saint Henri, one of my favorite wines that Penfolds does. I always describe this as Penfolds' alter ego. It's the top-level Shiraz they make, but unadulterated. No new oak in it, whereas Grange has got 100% new American oak. RWT's 100% French oak. This wine just sees large oak, and just to let the wine evolve a little bit more. This wine's really ripe and jammy, the 2008 vintage, showing some dark berry fruit, some sweet tobacco spice, some milk chocolate, blackberry. Wow, big and chewy on the tongue. This wine is really elegant, even though it's got a lot of fruit, really refined, got great acidity, and still some tannins coming through on the finish, some sweet tobacco and dark spices. Really well endowed, needs a little bit of time, but excellent juice as well. And then the Grange flights. This is what the money wines, what everybody was waiting for, the 2008, the 100-point wine. Man, this was all that and a box of chocolates. Lovely intensity in this wine. It just grew and grew. I still had a glass on my bar the second day here at the store, and just incredible how this wine was still on the second day, just open with a little bit in the glass. Blackberry jam, dark spices, mocha, licorice, exotic Asian spices, dark mint chocolate chip cookie, really dark fruits showing on the palate, kind of dark cherry coulis. Really lovely freshness in this wine, though, too. Wonderful balance. That's one of the things Grange has always been about. You know, it's not just one of these big over-the-top wines that hit you in the head with oak and fruit. It also is refined and has elegance. This 2008 showing an intense, long finish. This wine's going to be around for many, many years to come based on the old Granges we've had. Killer juice. The 1998, one of my favorite vintages of Grange. And this wine also, you know, I like to equate this to like an opera singer in its prime, you know, that can hit that high C and sustain it for a long time. The 98 is right there in its sweet spot. Lovely violet floral notes of that dark cherry fruit, dark chocolate, toasty oak spice, sweet tobacco, dark earth. Really smooth and silky on the tongue. The tannins really showing their age in this wine, but still wonderful concentration. That black licorice spice shown along with wonderful freshness all the way through to the finish. This wine's got another decade or more in your cellar based on the 81, which was also killer. This was a warm year. This wine showing some lovely sweet dill, red cherries, tobacco spice, really lovely complexity on the nose, a touch of eucalyptus as well, and smooth and silky texture on the palate. This wine's got layers of spice, still quite lively and fresh as well. This wine just gained complexity all night. Killer juice. All three of the Granges get my highest rating from this tasting. And then we've got the grandfather's port. You know, something a lot of people don't realize. They made outstanding fortified wines 100 years ago in Australia. They fell out of fashion. Some people still had, these old casks of tawnies. They found one at Penfolds from the early part of the last century and thus created the grandfather's port. 100-year-old wines go into this. They've got great grandfather that's even older and more rare, but this wine, one of my favorite tawny ports I've ever had from Australia. It has that lovely dates and figs, those brown spices, clove and cinnamon, and just wonderful freshness and acidity. A wonderful way to end the perfect meal. All right, that's what we had to drink with our friend D. Lynn Proctor from Penfolds. I'm your host, Andrew Lampasoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.